Good evening, everyone, and happy Easter, and welcome to Footy Furnace. Round 4 is still underway, but so far North Melbourne have owned the moment. The Swans flexed their muscles, and geez, Brisbane looks super scary way back on Thursday night against the Pies. As I welcome in our regular co-host, James Hird, the Essendon legend. Evening, Hirdy.
Yeah, Jimmy, great to be here. Fremantle, Melbourne and North Melbourne, the big winners for me. I mean, Melbourne was sensational against the Gold Coast, but Fremantle with that win over Adelaide keeps showing their form for the top four. Half-time
at Marvel Stadium. Essendon, speaking of feasting, the Bulldogs are feasting on Essendon at the moment. Artie Jones has been the story of the first half. 3 goals. Sam Darcy looks like he's got a bag in him. He's kicked 2. Norton's got 1. And Bontempelli has got his hand firmly on the 3 Brownlow votes, 22 touches and a goal early in this game.
Doing what he wants, running right through the game. But, yeah, the Bulldogs looking pretty scary up at half-time.
We'll keep you updated on that game. But Gold Coast and Melbourne played a little bit earlier at the MCG. If you couldn't get a kick today, you just couldn't get a kick. They were perfect conditions at the MCG. And this was really impressive from Melbourne. Gold Coast, coming off the bye, we thought, yep, they'll run and gun their whole entire way through this game. But it was actually Melbourne who had a fair bit more zest about them throughout the game. Yeah, well,
Gold Coast started well. I think kicked the first 4 out of the first 5 goals and looked like how far. But then Melbourne really started to bring themselves back in the game. I mean, he's just kicking goals from everywhere, isn't it, at the moment, King? But
well, that's all he's doing. He's not actually kicking it anywhere else apart from goal.
No, he's doing well. But, Jake Melksham here with probably the best mark he's ever taken. What a mark. And Jake was... we'll go through a few more Jake's highlights as we go through the package. But he dialed the clock way back. But I just love the way Melbourne exposed Gold Coast when they turned the ball over. Gold Coast players always pass the line of the ball. When they were attacking, they were looking good. But with Max Gawn, Cozzy Pickett, outstanding. 18 to 9 centre-bounce clearances. And the last 2 out of the last 4 have been 100-plus point games for Melbourne. And the Pickett name was on fire at the MCG on Sunday.
Yeah, it's this constant ball and movement from Melbourne and willing to be creative. And you can see already with the players thinking, well, what would I actually like to do, not what I'd be afraid to get told off to do. It's a different mindset. And Jake Melksham highlighted this in the post-match when he was interviewed about the freedom of ball movement.
I think the way our game plan's changed, there's a real sense of freedom with moving the ball. And as a forward, the way that we're moving it helps old guys like me still look somewhat young. But we've trained it all summer and it's been super exciting. And I can say as a forward, it's good to play with.
So I took his comments, Hirdy, that I don't think he was having a go at the previous Simon Goodwin regime or coaching tenure. It just feels like there's a little bit more sort of, call it width between the bumper bars. Yep. There's still structure to it. They still want to take the ball forward. It's pretty noticeable, more forward handball and overlap and just give the one to someone coming past. Whereas I reckon previously it was like, oh, hang on, we're at this part of the ground. We go a bit longer, a bit long and go safer down the line. Wait for Max to get down there. Now they're just going with speed and pace. And it's even highlighted by Max Gawn himself. You see him being involved in the passage of play a fair bit where he's getting the handball and he's linking up and being involved in the chain. And it's resulting in good scoreboard results. Already 3 times they've gone past the ton. You go back to when they won the premiership and, of course, they were contending in finals. It's a pretty good start to the year.
It is. And you talk about what Simon's Goodwin game was based on clearance and contest. They've still got that. I mean, they won centre bounce 18 to 9 this week, but you can just see them, you're right, getting more expansive, using the ball a bit better. So they're taking the good from Simon Goodwin's game and overlaying that with some better ball movement. They're going to come up against tougher challenges. I don't think Gold Coast were at their best on the weekend. I think they probably just came out for an easy run on a Sunday and attacked, and Melbourne really got them by surprise. But what we're seeing from Stephen King and his team in the first 4 rounds is 3 wins, 1 loss. And you've got to say he's got his players playing for him. And we talked last week about the role as a coach. You've always got to be cult-like. The players have got to believe in everything you did. That game against Carlton last week, that would have sent huge belief through the group, and this week only reinforced it. So what a great start for Stephen King and his coaching group.
Yeah, already they're sticking to the plan, aren't they? Gold Coast, as you mentioned a bit before, got the jump, but they stuck to the plan. Jake Melksham, we highlighted with his hanger, but he had a pretty good all-round day. His ball use, his savviness on the forward line, he's a good leader, finds teammates, and class finishing.
His intensity too around the ball. Even his first 4 or 5 contests where he leapt at the ball, he didn't mark it, but he brought the ball to ground. 34-year-old Jake. I coached Jake for 3 or 4 years at the Bombers, and he was a very good player. But even his one-on-one contest back then wasn't as good. But his craft is excellent. His knowledge of the game's excellent. His kicking skills are elite. And even when Melbourne weren't a great kicking side, he was one of the better kicks. And the reward for 4 goals to a 34-year-old who's been on 1-year contracts for 4 or 5 years is fantastic, and looks like he's loving his football, and his teammates love having him out there.
Now, if the Gold Coast are going to go deep in September, like we all expect them to do, Mac Andrew is going to be a big part of that. Both you and I, in the last 18 months, have highlighted the use of Mac Andrew. You saw, like I did, just sides taking him deep, and it's a bit of an issue for the Suns.
I think defensively the Suns were off. I don't think Damien Hardwick would have loved the way that Melbourne moved the ball end to end. But here's Mac Andrew here. Look how far away he is from Myercheck at a centre bounce. You've got to be right on their back shoulder. You can't be 5 or 10 metres away. And most of the day, when Melbourne took him deep, he looked vulnerable. Here, the Melksham handball. As soon as Melksham's picked that ball up, he has to bang, slap him, get him on the ground. He's too far away. That's not deep, desperate one-on-one defending and allowing Melbourne to have shots at goal. You've called it for the last 18 months, I think, that he's not a great one-on-one defender deep when they take him deep, and even his desperation here. Now, this game wasn't lost because of Mac Andrew. It wasn't Mac Andrew's fault. Just highlighting, I don't think as a team they were on defensively, and that's the example where they were too prepared to lay off. They wanted to read. They wanted to actually get, be the outnumber or take the intercept mark. As a defender, your primary role is beat your man. Yeah,
he's got extreme athletic gifts. I just think they'd be better utilised higher, and then that allows him to be that free range, jumping intercept we see with the big spoils, and he can do that, I think, a bit better up at the half-back line, and all sides work their way through it. So the counter to it is any chance sides can get Tom Stewart, they try and get him away from the contest. You learn how to free up your players, you roll players across, you play a bit of that ring around rosy. If it throws the opposition's forward line out while they're trying to drag him deep, well, they'll get smart on that. Damien Hardwick has seen all this before.
The other thing we should highlight is Max Gawn's game. I mean, just the way he gave his midfielders first use. When you're up against Rao, Anderson, Took Miller, you've got to make sure your ruckman takes the ball away from them, and he did a great job in doing that. And as I said before, 18 to 9 centre bounce clearances, giving them first use of the ball straight at the centre bounce.
Good Friday hasn't been a happy hunting ground for North Melbourne as they've tried to own the time slot. They've been touched up in recent times, but finally they stood up. Big 22-point comeback against Carlton. Well, most sides have come back against Carlton in the last few years, but for me, Hirdy, the last 2 goals. Let's take a look at North Melbourne and compare and contrast against Carlton here.
We're just going to have a look at Carlton now. Number 8, people asking what is Carlton not doing. First of all, this is Carlton's shape around the ball. They pick up the ball here. Look, they've got an outnumber of 4v2. That ball has to go back towards the corridor. They take it skinny. What happens? Look at the outnumber they had. They've got 8-2, Carlton here. They had to get the ball back through the corridor, shape the ball back so they could use the ball. In contrast, for North Melbourne's, I think it was second last goal, when North Melbourne win the ball here, look at their willingness to use their numbers around the contest, shape through corridor, take it back and get a good look back in the centre of the ground. The difference between Carlton and North when the game was up for grabs was stark, in my opinion. North Melbourne willing to use the ball, trying to shape it back through corridor. Carlton just wanted to take the ball skinny. People are saying, what is it, psychological? Is it game style? Is it method? What is it? To me, that is the prime example of a team that wanted to win by actually taking the game on to one that wanted to go safe and take the ball skinny.
So in saying that, the noise around Michael Voss, he can't physically do that for them when the game's on, but he can help set them up and instruct them during the week. Let's use more shape around the contest. What do we do in this situation? So this next period for Michael Voss and Carlton, it's going to be pretty intense.
It is, and using that example, if you continue to go skinny, it's too easy for teams to set up behind the ball. You kick it to them, they shape it back through you. But I feel for Michael. We've all been in a situation in coaching where you've got instructions, they're not being done. I'm sure he's telling them or asking them and coaching them what to do. It's just not happening for them on the ground.
I love the way Alistair Clarkson really poked the egos of the Kangaroos players, the young, emerging Kangaroos players. Well, you could put them out of the emerging category. A lot of them are now pushing up past 50 games, and he actually physically poked McKercher here in the chest as he came down at three-quarter time. You see him get over and go, come on, I need this from you. And I spoke about this in the lead-up to the game. It's okay to put a bit of pressure on your young players. He's trying to poke the ego by saying, hey, show me the reason why you're a number 2 pick, a number 3 pick, and now show the whole entire football world. Because I've been in this position with the Bomber Thompson. We had a number of draftees, and we're playing against the Saints, who at the time had a lot of high draftees, and they're going, well, they're better than you. And yeah, they'd be prodding the ego. No one likes their pride, hurt or dented. And you can put it on players every now and then.
And you need to as a coach, because the players get to the end of the career and say, why didn't you put it on me more? I don't remember one player gets to the end of their career and said, oh, he was a little bit too hard on me. Most of them say, I just wish he was harder and wish he dragged that out of me more. Every one of those young players will appreciate Alistair Clarkson saying, you need to do more. This is what you need to do to be the player we need you to be, rather than being soft, and they appreciate it.
Carlton have guaranteed Michael Voss to go to gather round and coach the Blues, but can he survive that period? Because
gather round?
No, post that, because when we had a look at their coming games on their fixture, that they've got a difficult run. They could be 1-12.
They have. They've got Adelaide, Collingwood, Fremantle, St Kilda, Brisbane, Bulldogs. Port Adelaide would have to be a potential win. Essendon would have to be a potential win. But I think if I was Carlton, I'd be penciling that game against Collingwood back at the MCG in round 6. I mean, there'd be nothing better than beating the arch rival to get your team back up. And also, I don't think Collingwood are flying. We'll talk about them a bit later, but I don't think Collingwood are flying by any stretch of the imagination.
The Saturday afternoon game, Richmond and Port Adelaide, which gets us to the word of Hird.
Yes, thanks, Jimmy. We want to talk about not necessarily the Port Adelaide versus Richmond game, which Port Adelaide won. It was a bit of a struggle. I want to talk about what I think is the quality of football at the moment and the way football is going. If you have a look at a tiered list of groups, which are the teams that can possibly finish in the top 6? And if you look at the top 7, Gold Coast, Western Bulldogs, Geelong, Hawthorn, Brisbane, Sydney, Freo, I think they're going to be fighting for the top 6. And top 6 is going to be essential for winning the premiership this year. You're going to have to be top 6. Adelaide right on the brink.
I'm interested about this one.
What's that?
I'm interested about Adelaide.
Adelaide right on the brink, just because I think they're a good team, but their defensive structure is fantastic. Defensive behind the ball, defensive with the ball, they defend the ground. I just don't think they're attacking enough to beat the good teams, and that will cost them, I think, a top 6 spot. And then where are they? The teams that we're not sure about. We've got Collingwood, GWS, St Kilda, and after today we've moved Melbourne up.
Oh, promoted.
I hope Melbourne's been promoted.
Is this a moving feast?
This is a moving feast. This morning it was very different, but we're on to Melbourne. So where are they? I'm not sure where Collingwood are. I just don't think they're playing with the depth and with the style that they need to. GWS, I've got no idea. St Kilda is a moving feast, and Melbourne after the weekend could be back up in the Adelaide crew on the brink. And then the bottom 6, tough for North Melbourne, who have won 3 out of 4. But North Melbourne, Essendon, Port Adelaide, Carlton, Richmond, West Coast Eagles, I think they're making up the bottom 6, and there's not much movement there.
Can I ask you, the top 7 on the brink, and where are they? What is the biggest separating factor for you? Is it balance both sides of the ball? You highlighted Adelaide. They're not attacking as well as they could. Is it both sides of the ball, or is there something that you look at and go, that makes them a genuine top 7 side compared to where are they?
I think it's their defensive profile mixed up with their midfield and their attack. I mean, Adelaide, I'm just not sure they have the depth in midfield to actually go with the best teams. And that was shown in the finals last year. I might be proven very wrong, but so far this year, their depth in midfield and their ability to score when necessary, not so much. But, people question the Bulldogs' defensive profile. Have they got it? It looks like so far this year they have. Hawthorn, are they able to play with ball in hand and without the ball around the midfield? Not all those teams have, are a certainty. But if you look at Brisbane, you look at Geelong, and I think you look at Fremantle and Sydney, they're teams that should hit that top 4.
I'd love to look at this list after about round 10.
No, we'll be burning this list straight up. No, I think it's look for me sitting back after watching the weekend.
Yeah,
a lot of disappointing games, of football, and games that were one-sided in terms of the quality of one team against the other, and that's where that bottom 6 is really going to struggle.
For a further look at Hirdy's tier list, Julian Vallance with Foxcatcher's Insights, powered by PointsBet.
Thanks, Jimmy. Following on from Hirdy's tiers, let's get into the market perspective here. And I think this really shows that Hirdy's bang on in terms of the great divide between teams yes, teams no, and teams sort of in the middle, in limbo. So let's look at the premiership market. We can see, you've got the favourites there. That's a 20% chance in terms of $5 for Brisbane. But I want to look at Collingwood. So they're $34. So that suggests a 3% chance. Now, usually when you're looking at a premiership market, it's open, it's flat. You have maybe up to 13, 14 teams, probably around lower than that $26, $21 mark. We don't see it here. So there's 11 teams that are less than 3% chance in terms of a market perspective to be able to win the flag this year. That's outrageous. We go to the top 6 market. And again, we see Collingwood I'll focus on. At their price, that's considered an 18% chance for them to make the top 6. So it's an 82% chance that they won't make it. St Kilda, 14% chance that they'll make the top 6. 86% chance that they won't make it. And here's the really stark one, the one we can really see this. So you see the flat open market with the premiership, plenty of chances who can win it. But when you go to the teams that'll finish bottom 4, this is outrageous when you look at it. So Essendon's more or less with that price given a 95% chance of finishing top 4. Richmond a 91% chance finishing bottom 4. Carlton bottom 4 67%. West Coast 53%. And even North Melbourne and Port Adelaide 36 and 29% probability of finishing in the bottom 4. You don't see that too often, especially at round 4. And you compare that to the premiership market. Yeah, Hirdy's right. We've got tiers here and it is not good.
What's gambling really costing you? For free and confidential support, call the number on the screen or visit the website.
Footy Furnace, proudly presented by PointsBet's new Pull'em for AFL. What's gambling really costing you?
Well, now the traditional clash at the Gabba on the Thursday, Holy Thursday, Brisbane and Collingwood. Well, Brisbane certainly flexed their muscles, and I think it had the whole entire AFL world going, geez, this is a scary side in front of us. And it really exposed the Pies' depth in the midfield when Nick Dacos, he went through that fitness test, which was a bit odd. He looked sore and ginger. You should have just pulled him out early.
We looked at it Wednesday on our show Wednesday night, and he just didn't look great Wednesday. You just wonder why you'd push a guy who's so important to you in a game where he's so proppy.
Yeah, if it's a game time decision, I think clubs normally go, well, out he goes. But it just needs to highlight the importance of Nick Dacos. So disposals, he's number 1. Uncontested possessions, he's number 1. Contested possessions, he's number 2 at Collingwood. Clearances, he's number 2 at Collingwood. And score involvements, he's number 1. And it really will just open them up inside and outside. And it probably leaves the question, you throw in, of course, Pendles was out as well. And then, Moore. They just lacked a little bit, those extra numbers which the Lions had across the field.
They went from looking a really classy team with, class and poise across the field and having depth to just not, the next layer just not quite being there. I think, we talked about it, but your view is that they just haven't brought in those younger guys quickly enough to give them enough experience.
Well, I think when you've got an experienced side coming in, where you can, you want to get them taste, like 4 and 5 game blocks or 5 and 6 game blocks while you're going really well. So then you don't ever get that situation of, say if 3 or 4 leave, then you've got, 4 or 5 players who are under 20, 30 games. It's actually happening a bit at the Giants now when you notice that they started their half forward line with the 3 small forwards that had about 6 games combined. What you want to do is, while the good guys are playing really well, you try and sneak a game in here and there. But because their senior players have played pretty much entire seasons over the last couple of years, they just hadn't had those opportunities. But I just want to bring up something I noticed in the game, Hirdy, and this is real coachy sort of stuff, so I know you'll like this. I found this and thought you'd love it. This is Craig McRae. Look, they were getting absolutely beaten around the ball inside and out. And that's Craig McRae just saying, get on the outside, get on the back shoulder. He's yelling and screaming. A little bit before this, he went to his computer screen. And what he's asking here is all the Collingwood mids to get on the back of their players, because this is what happened just a little bit earlier. You watch the bees to the honeypot here for the Pies.
Goey, Perryman.
And I think it's McCreary who's come up. So you end up with 3 or 4 players, including the ruckman, all 1 metre with the ball. And what the Lions were doing well was they were having enough representation inside, but they were getting from inside to outside really quickly. And then they were able to swarm. So they had the balance beautifully done. As you saw before, McRae, get on the back, fellas, get on the back. And this is the stoppage straight after it. And you'll have a look when the ruckman go to hit the ball, where the Collingwood players are. So when we play it out, they're all eventually try and get onto the back shoulder. At least you own something. Now, it wasn't successful on the night because Brisbane were excellent, but at least you're still trying to coach something or trying to win an aspect of the game while it was unfolding. Because, look, it's only 23 points. That's the next stoppage after it. They nearly had a good result on it. De Goey, just fumbled the footy, but he was still trying to keep coaching the game. Let's try and find a win somewhere.
It's a great point, Jimmy, because when you're getting beaten around stoppage and you're being sucked into the ball, handball, they can get their way out. You're exactly right. You want to get back shoulder and try and collapse them in and push them into the stoppage so that they narrow their space down. And if they do win on the inside, they can't get on the outside because you've got that cover. And, knowing a few people have been at Collingwood over time, they make sure when they're getting beaten, they make sure their players get the back shoulder and beat them from there.
Yeah, I loved watching that, and I knew you'd appreciate seeing their coaching stuff. Difficult to get dropped from this Brisbane side, but I'll list some names, and apologies, I'm highly likely going to miss someone. Andrews, Hipwood, McCluggage. You've still got Annabelle, who's still to come in. Marshall, who was a high pick last year. Darcy Gardner, Noah Answorth, and Hugh McCluggage, who will be likely back this week, maybe the week after. That's a frightening proposition for
It is frightening. Can you know the players getting dropped now? Can you go through that exercise?
No, well, it's normally someone like Bruce Revel who gets put out, but he couldn't have played any better out on the wing, and his kicking was magnificent. Guys like that, Ty Gallop has now found a secondary position after playing as a forward in their premiership as a key back, so it's going to be difficult. You know what it's like when you're playing in a fantastic side that's been a good side for a long time. Guys just come in and replace. They don't come in and then have a bad game. They come in and replace because they know they're only going to get 1 or 2 opportunities, and if they don't, they're out. So the sign of a great team is having very good players out, but the players replace them, play their role and do it very well. Adelaide and Freo at the Adelaide Oval turned into an absolute thriller. The Freo got off to a cracking start and Adelaide kept chipping away, got in front at one stage, but the Hyundai go big moment of the weekend was match-saving Alex Pearce's smother. And look at this, desperation times, 20 seconds to go, tick, tick, tick. Peatling goes for the big banana. Alex Pearce just throws himself across Peatling's boot. And you watch again, it's just that last outstretched hand with almost the big rejection. Nope. And all his teammates just launched into him because look how far he flew across. I know it's a bit cliche, but that was a captain's moment when it needed. Yeah, it sure was. And it was fantastic for Freo winning on the road. And they're really showing they're the real deal. And it was concerning for them that the Adelaide came back from like 30-odd points to almost win the game. But, we're critical of Adelaide. I am critical of Adelaide at the moment. They just can't get over the line against those great teams. When you look at that edit and look how close they were to winning a game against one of the best teams, maybe we're a little bit too critical of the fact that their midfield just doesn't seem to have the depth of the other team. Alex Pearce's smother was the go big moment thanks to Hyundai. Do big things with Hyundai, and some of their young players are doing big things, and this is where they need the lift for Freo. I've got them finishing in top 2 when we do the way too early predictions to try and map out a ladder. But you need your young players. You need not only to bring guys in, which they've done in recent years with McVie and Bolton to name a couple, and Jackson if you go back even further, but you need your young players to pop. And the thing for me, Hirdy, is Joel Corey, a guy who I value his opinion really highly on football, who can develop players. He worked with Bont and that Bulldogs midfield all those years ago, and of course was a long-time teammate of mine. I remember standing before a game when he was coaching, about to coach a game for Freo. I said, "What do you got here?" And he couldn't stop singing the praises of a young Johnson and Erasmus. Yep. And of course, Murphy Reid had just stormed onto the scene. Now moving from half forward on ball, we just know what quality. But that's where you get the lift from. Because you spoke about midfield depth of some sides. I think those guys are taking Freo up another level. No, they are, and I think across the board they're playing better, they're moving the ball better, and their young players are getting better and showing on the park. You've already touched on some concerns for Adelaide. Yeah. The midfield depth, or is it the ball use that's... which part? Well, let's have a look at their defensive numbers. And their defensive numbers look really good. I mean, opposition inside 50, 16th, points against not that good, but opposition scores for inside 52nd. Their defensive profile and the way they go about things, I think, is very good. Yeah. They're very hard to play against, and that keeps them in games when perhaps it's hiding some of the deficiencies around the ball and then the way they move the ball. And you've got to be good at all phases. Yes, you can get to a certain stage in the season with one being very good, but I think at some stage they're going to find another elite midfielder or develop another midfielder on their list and then take a little bit more risk with the ball, even though they don't want to get scored against. So just quickly, do you think it's game plan or just in those moments? I think Matthew Nicks likes to be, I wouldn't say defensive, he's a defensive coach. He likes to be in the game defensively and likes to be rock solid defensively, and I think he structures his team that way. Well, let's go to Jules Valance to touch more on Adelaide in those close games, all thanks to Foxcatcher Insights.
Thanks, Jimmy. Yeah, I'm going to look at Hirdy's numbers here in terms of Adelaide because there's some interesting data around it. So let's go 2025 to now, the close ones with Adelaide. And it's really interesting. So they've played 11 games where they've ended up pretty close or they've been in front at some stage in that last quarter. They've only won 3. They've lost 8. Now, the win strike rate there spits out at 27%. Now, the market expectation sits at 52%. So, in essence, they should have won around 6 of them. They've only won 3. So let's add 2024 into the mix. Now, there was obviously a draw with Brisbane as well, so we add that in. But they played 9 in 2024 close. They only won 2. They lost 7. Again, win strike rate well below the market expectation, which was a little bit higher there. And then we add them all together. They've played 20. They've only won 5. They've lost 15. That win strike rate sits at 25%. The market expectation's at 53%. No doubt it is an issue. It is real. The numbers are real. They're getting close. They're getting to third base, but they're not getting that home run. They're going to have to do some work on it, the Crows.
What's gambling really costing you? For free and confidential support, call the number on the screen or visit the website.
Now, if you're heading to the footy or exploring Melbourne, Brady Hotels and Apartments is the place to stay.
It is, Jim, offering great value across 4 CBD locations, all within walking distance of the MCG and Marvel Stadium.
Flinders Street and Hardware Lane feature spacious apartment-style stays, while Central Melbourne and Jones Lane put you right in the heart of the action.
Family and friends can enjoy Melbourne their way. Some head to the footy, while others explore the city's best dining, shopping and attractions, all while getting excellent value for their stay.
Brady Hotels and Apartments, the smart, value-packed base for game day and city adventures. Well, about 6 minutes 30 to go in the third quarter down at Marvel Stadium. The Dogs have well and truly put the cue in the rack. They lead that by about 38 points. West Coast and Sydney, well, this was your 2 different tiered systems going at it. West Coast have got some great feel-good from across the AFL industry, but they ran into Sydney Swans fresh off the bye, and Tom Papley's 200th game. They torched the Eagles from the get-go.
They absolutely did, and all the hard work the Eagles have done over the last couple of weeks. But Sydney Swans forward handball, it's noticeable that that's the big change in their game, the way they move the ball forward. They've seen, I think, a glitch in the AFL system, so we're going to exploit it with forward handball, and they're doing it as well as anyone. And when you've got Heaney and Warner and those guys running through the middle of the ground, very hard to stop.
Yeah, and Justin McInerney, for me, Hirdy, is one who's certainly benefiting from it. Of course, Errol Goulden has gone out, so you've got to add him back into the side. Imagine him when the ball's moving this well through the middle of the ground. But McInerney, who we're going to highlight, is hitting the scoreboard really, really rapidly and kicking a couple of goals a game, getting 20-plus touches. But it's where he's getting them. So you look at all these. He's so smart at getting in the eye line of players, whether it be by hand or foot. But it's almost if you drew the channel between the logos of centre wing. He's not going outside of those. And he does this whether he's playing half forward or he comes up and takes the centre bounce. We know he's huge running power. And he's gone from a guy who's been out on the wing and doing his role and getting up and down point post to being a real threat, where sides have got to actually start putting some more attention into him, because he's a quality finisher, whether he's kicking inside forward 50. Again, look at this one. He just tracks the play really well. He's off to the right here, eventually gets linked up here with a short kick. Could have been a handball, and he plays on. But this one here again, he cuts through. That's about as wide as he gets for his shot. And, of course, does the smart thing. Don't give it to a ruckman because they'll burn it. Sorry, Brodie Grundy. But, again, there he comes, tracking back up through the middle.
And the predictable ball movement of the Swans, knowing that they're going to forward handball, they're going to means as a forward you can lengthen the ground. So what you do is you get your defender up the ground, and if you've got that running capacity to lengthen and get back before he gets back, you get some free ball, which is, he's getting a lot of his ball without a lot of pressure because of the way the Swans move the ball and because of his running power and ability to read the play and make the ground bigger.
We know West Coast are going to get beaten by some really good sides. We just hope they're not the 100-point losses, which we saw the other night, and they can hang on a little bit better. But the Swans just had it all their own way. So hopefully from now on, it's behind them. But, there is an expectation with the side. I think they had 11 of the youngest players on the ground. And I think 10 of those were under the age of 22. It's going to happen throughout the season. But the positive I found is whenever you've heard Andrew McQualter and people at West Coast talk about the number 1 pick, Willem Dersma, they're like, no, we're just going to hold off going inside. The fact that he recognised there was a good teaching moment by putting him inside, putting him on Isaac Heaney at stoppages, getting him around, Chad Warner, I think that was really clever. You don't have to stick to the plan in concrete and be stubborn about it, because they said, no, we'll just ease him into the midfield. Like I'm talking about inside centre bounce. He's going to play wing and half forward a fair bit. But there was a moment. So after half time, Isaac Heaney, Warner, go learn off them, try and take them on, and he showed great glimpses.
And the one thing about playing on Chad Warner and Isaac Heaney, as good a players as there are, if you win the ball as West Coast, you know they're not tracking back. I mean, I don't think I've seen, no offence to them, track back that hard, the two Sydney Swans superstars. So if you can get the ball in hand and win it, you can get out and use the ball pretty well as well.
No, I just like that from a coach. You don't have to be concrete and stubborn all the time if you can see opportunities. It's time for the early check-in, all thanks to Brody Hotels. The early check-in, of course, is tomorrow's Easter Monday traditional clash, of course, Geelong versus Hawthorn. Hirdy, we always talk about Hawthorn. If you allowed them to get that first release mark, good luck. The ground goes like that downhill for them. And where the Cats have been very successful in recent times when they do beat the Hawks is they cut out that release. We've shown this one a number of times. Look how well the Cats are set up behind the ball. Outside shoulder, that's called. Means Tom Stewart can march up, allows all the players around the ball to go to work so you can charge at the ball and you can charge at the man. And you look up and Sicily's going, oh no, what have they got? That's front half football. Doesn't have to be pretty. As you look here, Amon, who unfortunately is out tomorrow, along with Mackenzie with knee soreness, he's running. This is normally Hawthorn charging, have a release, but because the outside shoulders cover, allows Henry to charge him down and you create all sorts of panic.
It's everyone knows what Hawthorn's going to do, and Chris Scott, obviously one of the best coaches in the AFL, knows what he's going to do. Is whether the Hawthorn system can beat the Geelong system. I think for Hawthorn to win, it's a bit more territory. I don't think they want to be attacking from deep in defence because Geelong, as you said, will take away that first shot, will prevent them kicking their way through. Hawthorn need to attack from half-back to the centre forward to win this game. They can definitely do it. They just need a bit more emphasis around their midfield and their contest work to beat Geelong. But for me, but you being a Cats man, I still like the way Geelong play and set up against the Hawks, even though I don't think Geelong are playing their best football at the moment.
So the outs, Amon with knee injury, Mackenzie out with a knee, Jack Dalton comes in for his debut at AFL, and Flynn Perez, who played some games at North Melbourne, comes in for his first Hawks game. Brad Close and Jack Bowes come in. Mark O'Connor is rested and Jai Clark omitted. Got a tip for us?
Yes, the Cats for me. I think I just think their structure and the way they'll do it's better. But you know, hopefully it's another Easter Monday sensation like the ones you were involved in back in your heyday.
I think I might be having a bit each way.
Oh, really?
I hope the Cats win, but I've tipped the Hawks. Whew. Well, because my concern all year has been the small forwards for opposition against the Cats, and when you've got the battery that the Hawks have, you know, McDonald, Moore, Watson, and Ginnivan. I think they'll be a handful for the Cats and get up and down the ground pretty well. For more on tomorrow's Easter Monday clash, here's Jules Vallance with Foxcatcher Insights.
Thanks, Jimmy. Let's look at this game from a market perspective. And the Hawks are going to start favourite, no doubt about that. But let's look at these two teams. Now, they're both high-scoring teams. We saw that in 2025. Hawthorn average 90, the Cats massive at 105. A little bit lower this year for the Cats, but we know there's reasons for that. Again, high-scoring team Hawthorn this year. MCG Twilight, we saw it obviously with Melbourne Gold Coast earlier in the round. They scored 198, 173. That's high. The highest you can possibly be from a scoring perspective at the MCG in 2025 was the Twilight games. It's probably 2 goals above night, about 1.5 goals above the day. Recent games, high score, yeah, that's a positive as well. But here's the trick. We've been speaking about this the last couple of weeks about the Hawks in uncontested game. They win it, well, they win 81% of the games. It's just absolutely their MO. But the Cats, in the last 5 games, have won 4 of the 5 uncontested battle. That's the key. The one time that the Hawks did win, well, it's the closest they got to the Cats. They only lost by 7 points. The Cats seem to have the blueprint to be able to beat the Hawks, but the Hawks off 18 days and the bye, I think they might have been able to crack the code against the Cats. Hawks in a high-scoring game.
What's gambling really costing you? For free and confidential support, call the number on the screen or visit the website.
Footy Furnace, brought to you by the all-new Alexio EV by Hyundai. Fiji Airways, the happiest way from Australia to the world. Fiji Airways, where happiness takes flight. And Brady Hotels and Apartments, Melbourne CBD accommodation just minutes from Marvel Stadium and the MCG.
Three-quarter time, Dogs and Bombers, 73-39. Bond has 27 and a goal. Archie Roberts is the best for the Bombers as far as possessions goes, 27 touches. Artie Jones had 3 goals early in this game, but he's gone off injured. And Sam Darcy, 2-2. Ed Richards was a late out in this game as well with knee soreness. So coming into this game, Hirdy, we thought Dogs by how far, and it certainly started that way. They put up a cricket score in the first quarter in particular. The Bont, you might want to give him a little bit more attention, especially if he's strolling inside forward 50. And as we highlight those numbers up until half-time, well over 20 and a goal. They just didn't have, I guess, their starting points down pat, the Bombers, but they've been able to sort of hang tough, which is a good sign because since pretty much quarter time, they've pretty much been level pegging. Yeah,
look, the Bombers, at quarter time, we thought it was going to be how far, but the Bombers have certainly come back. They've possessed the ball a bit, they've used the ball better and defended the ground better against the Bulldogs team who they started to get a bit fancy with the ball. I thought the Bulldogs after quarter time, but Artie Jones here, he was on fire early in the game, kicking 3 goals and 2 outstanding marks and just really looking to take the game apart. But just the way the Bulldogs win the ball at half back and then use the ball means that you can't turn the ball over in bad spots against them because you just can't defend the ground. Yeah, and Archer May showed some things in some one-on-one marking contests. We just had a look at Archie Perkins. He got a free ball and we'll bring it up. And it's probably, I guess it's a sign of confidence and he was trying to make things happen here, but his whole entire team had lined up thinking this is going to be a long, slow possession down the line. He looked down the line, big key forwards start to wander over, and you want to just analyse where he's taking this next kick. Well, one place you can't put is the top of the square here, because look at all the Bulldogs players lined up. They've just feasted on that straight down the other end of the ground. If your teammates are lining up for a long down the line, 2 of them, you've got to honour that. Either you take the mark or you take the ball over the boundary line for a boundary throw-in or a ball up. But here, the Bulldogs just able to walk the ball down to the other end of the ground for a shot at goal and eventually kick another goal to Artie Jones, I think it was. Yeah, and Artie Jones was the one who nearly got hanged on across the half-back line, so his work rate and he was getting reward for it. The Dogs are actually goalless in the second half, and we'll take a look at some of the key moments right now. So here we go. Essendon actually start to get a bit of the ball and use each other, which I reckon at the start of the game, they were in a rush and caught between 2 different modes, Hirdy, where they go quick out their back half or try and possess it, but they started to find the balance. They're going pretty even with the Dogs. The Dogs just making some uncharacteristic skill errors. Maybe it's a mental thing because who they're playing against and jumped out to a big lead. And they've possessed the ball. They've taken now 80 marks. They had 25 marks at quarter time, and they're up to less than that, and they're up to 80. What they're doing is actually possessing the ball and keeping the ball off the Dogs, and the Dogs aren't handling that defensive pressure. I don't think the Dogs are in any danger of losing the game, but Essendon really owned the ball, found a way to kick through the Dogs, and yes, have outscored them since half-time. That was a bit more like how they tried to play last year. Once they got the ball back, try and possess it. Defending with ball in hand. Defending with ball in hand. See a bit more of that. Would that do them? It'll keep them in games closer, but does it actually set them up in the long term? I think at the moment it's probably a good ploy because it actually reduces the score and the differential. But I think in the long-term view, if you're possessing the ball going backwards and sideways, eventually teams can press you and you're not taking the ball forward. The 2 stats that are the biggest indicator of success are time possession and metres gained. You put those 2 together, I think you win 80. If you win those 2 together, you win 80%, 87% of the game. Just possessing the ball going backwards and sideways won't do that. We had lots of high flyers this week, lots of hangers, Jake Melksham, Isaac Heaney, but Maurice Rioli is our high flyer thanks to Fiji Airways. What a hang this is. He launches from a mile back. Don't worry about Melkelty Lafau, they're just getting a little hand in. But it was an unbelievable screamer from Maurice. He doesn't get up that high, normally running guys down or kicking beautiful snap goals, but a little pop at the top of the goal square. No, there was 3 of them actually. Jake Melksham was, Rioli was there, Melksham, and then there was Isaac Heaney one on the weekend. So good to see the high mark is there. I know some people calling for it to be ruled out because of head-high contact, but I'd hate to see that happen in our game. No. Ruin the game. It's a great talking point, but that's where it stays for me, Hirdy. Thank you, Fiji Airways, for this week's High Flyer. Fiji Airways, the happiest way from Australia to the world. Well, Footy Classified will be back tomorrow after, of course, Hawks and the Cats at the MCG. I'll be on there with Damo, of course, Sam McClure, and Nathan Brown is our special guest on there. Lloydie's just putting the toes up, getting ready for Gather Round. You're back Tuesday night. Tuesday night we're in Adelaide for a special Gather Round spectacular with Eddie Maguire hosting from the Barossa Valley. Swilling a few Merlots over there. Well, we might get a chance to do that later on after the show. Well, hopefully you're in good shape for Wednesday, Footy Furnace? I might be. We might have to see. I might be a late replacement. Knee soreness for Hirdy, but Wednesday Furnace will be back. Thanks for listening.